I'm Ryan Hellquist, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Hey, Ryan, this is really great to meet you. You are playing a role in a show called La Macabre, and you play a guy named Ryan Holbrook. And
That's
my
right.
first question is, are you the modern day Tony Danza, where you will always play characters with your first name?
I hope so. It makes it easier on set when they call for your name. You know exactly who they're talking about.
Especially
Although
when there's two Ryans.
there's two Ryans. So what's funny is the gal who played my sister, Jamie Holbrook, her real name is Ryan Bartley.
Oh my
and
God.
So there were legitimately two Ryans on set some days, and then you have the character Ryan too. So then you're talking a third person. I think Ryan should go do this. It's like, wait.
Everybody should go check out La Macabre. I've been watching it on Amazon Prime. If you guys use the link that's in the show notes, if you're watching right now, it's on the screen itself. When you guys click on that, obviously the Ryans and crew get the benefit of you watching their show, which I definitely recommend. But also, the show Break It Down show gets a little benefit too. Anytime you guys can use the Amazon link, it's great. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and ring the bell. I can't tell you how important it is. One more thing I would ask of you, and this should be fun and easy. If you comment, the video instantly is rated higher. So please comment. Don't feel shy about that. Even if you say, hey, what up, Doe? I will say yes, and I will heart it and I will reply. So please do these things to give us, to fight the algorithm, you need money and you need participation. That's what you need. All right, that's me selling me. Let's get back to talking about La Macabre, Ryan. It's okay. So here's what I figured out about the industry, right? I've talked to a lot of creators, and I love supporting. And I'm going to put you guys in the indie world, even though I don't think that your production is necessarily that. But it's sequels, it's expanding universes, it's giant names, all in this bubble that's kind of disappeared away from Hollywood, like it's disconnected. Hollywood, as I see it, true Hollywood has evolved, and it's things like what you're doing with me here and what you guys create La Macabre style. And that's where the creativity, because the money bets are too big for Hollywood. They can't take a risk on we're going to make this thing look like and I'm saying this the best possible way. We're going to make this thing look like we're kind of amateurs, we're running around and do these things. And it's supposed to, like my girlfriend was watching with me. She's like, is it supposed to be this way? And I'm like, yes, it's part of the thing. So
right.
I love what you guys are doing. I love that you're attacking this creative part of the equation. Talk a little bit about, you guys have been doing this for a while too. I want to talk about what La Macabre is, but I really want to get into, you guys started this, coming up on 8 years ago now.
Wow. I guess so. Yeah. That's crazy. So first of all, it's funny, the name, it is LA Macabre, like Los Angeles, but I always say La Macabre too, because it's like, it looks that way on the thing, but just to clarify for folks out there, it's LA, Los Angeles, Macabre there. But yeah, so, Dan asked, the creator, writer, director, he had this story for a long time ago, and when we started season 1, it was kind of like this. The idea is this found footage, kind of documentary style, and it was a YouTube show first, and it was a YouTube show talking about a YouTube show that explores the macabre history of Los Angeles. And so you're absolutely right. That style, was exactly what we were going for. And to kind of also, be 100% honest, it's part of the budget too. We started off with a much smaller budget, so we did have to make it look there, but we wanted to justify that style with the story. And then as season 2 came along and we had more funding for that, we were able to expand the world and step out of the kind of YouTube show format and make it look more like a legit television show. And so, it was a great evolution for that time. Yeah.
But that's just sort of what the modern market is, right? Like so as a podcast producer, I'm always trying to talk to fellow creators in Hollywood, because there are, I don't know, let's say there's 100,000 ideas. Look, I'm trying to get Daniel to join us here. I didn't realize that was a possibility, so I'm going to have him come in, because he's a big part of the creation aspect of it. Let me just send him this email as I navigate all these things in real time. This is ridiculous.
Sure.
So as a podcaster, I'll go pitch somebody. I'm going to talk to Jeffrey Reddick, who created the Final Destination series, right? And he's got I don't know how many scripts that'll ever be made, 25, 30 of them at one, one a month. You know, people write all the time. Right. And we have these abilities to take these ideas and kind of, it's a new form of piloting, you know, so maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a YouTube series, maybe you just put the pieces together and it takes you 5 years, but someone's like, hey, and maybe the market evolves like it has to support something like what you're doing.
No, you hit it right on the head when you said it's a new form of piloting. That's exactly right. I mean, so many creators that I know as well, you know, in the old days when you have a TV show, you pitch it to a network, you pitch it to a studio, and if they like it, you know, they'll make a pilot, they'll make it happen. Now they won't even look at if you're a new writer or a new creator coming into the fold, they'll say, go make it first. Go make it first on YouTube. Go make it first as a podcast. Go make it first and especially now with narrative podcasts coming into play, you know, a lot of folks are saying, yo, if you like this story and you think it's got legs, go make it, prove the numbers to us, and then come back to us, and then we'll talk about it, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So there's 2 hard tasks in there. And then there's another aspect too on the back end I want to bring up. Okay. So hard task number 1, make something. Now we're all makers, we're all creators. And so we can probably wrap our heads around that, but it's got to be good enough. Like it can't be so low quality that nobody wants to watch. And look at this. A bonus guest. Here comes Dan Ash, who created this thing. Okay, so you've got to actually create it, right? Yeah. And then you have to build a following, which is way easier said than done. I mean, listen to me at the top of this thing saying, please subscribe, please ring the bell, please comment, please. This is how we live, you know?
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is that as non-powerhouse, you know, studio creators, right? If you can build your own audience, you kind of be like, yeah, well, you know, we'll talk to you later on. Maybe I'm kind of being kind of high, you know, but when you already have 100,000 people, you have them, you know, so you come with a better bargaining position.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Dan, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I didn't mean to crash it, but you know, happy to be here.
Hey, man,
how could you crash a show about your show?
You know, because I just mistook it for, I got the invite. I was in the middle of a jog, actually. And I got an invite saying, like, in 10 minutes, you know, you're on this show. And I was just like, oh man, that was like the fastest shower I've taken in a while. And then I like go through the email chain after I sent you an email. And I was like, oh, this was just for Ryan. This was just to let me know, you know? And so sorry, Ryan.
Hey man, always happy to have you talk about stuff, you know.
I think this is cool. What we're basically talking about right now, Dan, is how the market has evolved and how you're able to go out and you know, a new form of piloting. You know, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a YouTube show, maybe it's both at the same time, and just taking these. I mean, I was saying there's probably 100,000 scripts on someone's shelf, hard drive, whatever, that'll never get made. And then, and maybe because it is impossible, it's a period piece from the 1820s. Who the hell cares about that? You know, now you're like, hey, we'll just make this thing in audio form or YouTube form, or, you know, how many times has someone redone Shakespeare or, gosh, my favorite guy, you know, Sherlock Holmes. There's a zillion versions of Sherlock Holmes in different time frames, right? And you can just do this now on your own.
Yeah, I think that there's like a nice democratization of the ability to create media and tell stories through media. And I know that like Ryan does this as well. You know, he's been involved in a lot of productions, you know, who like go to the YouTube space or the radio space or the podcast space. And the idea that the equipment is getting cheaper and easier to use. Somebody said this once. I thought it was a really great quote. It was the number of filmmakers is growing exponentially, but the number of storytellers stays the same. And I think it really does kind of filter out, you know, there may be a lot of content and a lot of people making it, but it really does force the stuff that engages with audiences to kind of rise to the top, you know, and I think that that's a tricky thing to navigate. But I think for the audience, it just means that they're still going to find the good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm thinking because the run up for this show has been, you know, such a long, and you guys are really pioneering this field. So I mean, it's pioneering work. I mean, it's not supposed to be easy, but you also now have the ability to put something on hiatus and have it not mean it's just canceled. Like you really could come back and you guys were active doing things, but you could come back and go, let's come back in 3 years and do another season and continue to have these things, especially as you build an audience. Like, wait, I mean, Stranger Things was not going to be this year thing, but it keeps working. And so they keep making it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's nice. I mean, you see it even, as you said, with Stranger Things, with these bigger productions, that they can take the time off, and streaming, Netflix, Hulu, even HBO, they'll take the time off between seasons if they're able to. I think even The Wire, back in like the mid 2000s, took a couple of years off in between seasons 3 and 4. So it's nice to have that breathing room to kind of be able to reset and figure out what the best courses or the best options are for another season.
Ryan, as an actor and creator in general, it also takes the pressure off you. You're not ensnared into a serial, like a super successful, procedural show where like 20 years you're doing this, but you literally rarely ever get to express yourself artistically outside of your day-to-day job.
Yeah, exactly. There was when I was a kid, I was like, man, I just don't want to be ever stuck on a thing forever and be in that same rut or routine. It's one of the things I loved about acting, is that each role is different, each story is different, the crew is different. You're having novelty every time that you're on a different project, and so I definitely want to maintain that and not get kind of stuck, like you're saying, like a procedural show where you're the same thing over and over again.
But if NCIS came calling and said, "Hey, we've got $1 million," it's a good kind of stuff. But in terms of being creative, you have a lot of freedom right now. How do you decide then when something comes in? Like, are you in a position where you're getting scripts at a rate that you're having to make actual hard decisions? Are you trying to write your own things? Are you trying to find other indie level folks who are? Where would you at in terms of being an actor? Because you're leading this thing, so this gives you a real chance to have someone else say, "Hey, I need someone like Ryan."
Well, thank you. I hope so. I'm kind of playing it in different strategies. So one strategy is to, you're right, generate my own work, have things that are, going to play into my specific strengths as an actor and the stories that I want to tell, because I'm going to be more passionate about getting those off the ground. Also connecting and maintaining relationships with people that I find are really fun to be around just as a fellow human, and also love creating with. And so the more of those relationships I have, then, there's more work that is mutually beneficial for all of us. And then also going for the big leagues, I just got a new agent this last year that's been phenomenal. And we, sending out auditions to the bigger television shows and movies and things like that. So trying to play it on all fields to get as much work generated as I can. Yeah.
I wanted to ask both of you, and I guess, Dan, if you can go first. It seems that acting has changed a little bit, where, there's like the big production, the Crown kind of acting that we're all used to and everything, right? That style of thing. But what you're asking the Ryans and crew to do is something that's, I don't want to say a parody because I don't mean it's funny, but you're asking them to make something, at least initially, that is YouTube grade, right? Like, we're going to do this ourselves. The acting may not be stellar. So they're acting like someone who isn't super polished at acting, which is in fact a great form of acting, but not something you see very often. I mean, I get it. It was fantastic. It was real, because this is what it looks like when you watch someone's, we're going to go do paranormal stuff. It looks like that, which I hope you guys take as a compliment, because that's how I'm meaning it.
I absolutely do. I think that it was tricky, particularly transitioning between seasons 1 and 2, where season 1 kind of plays more documentary found footage and season 2 transitions into a single camera drama. But I know for me as a director, season 1 was a challenge because you really live and die on how natural those performances are. And on a budget level and on a production level, you can get away with some grittiness around the edges. In fact, it kind of helps you smooth over the rough edges by being a part of the aesthetic. If the camera wobbles or something's out of focus, it's okay. It's found footage. But if a line feels over delivered, if it feels like a performance, then it starts to take you out of it. And so the whole cast, really has to walk this line where they're trying to lean into the naturalism of it. And then in season 2, they have to figure out how to pivot into performances that feel like they came from that natural place in season 1, but they fit the style of season 2, where it's a more traditional single camera drama. It's not found footage, and not have it feel too jarring. And of course, I am proud of what we accomplished, but I I'm hesitant to take a lot of credit for that, because I think honestly they say 95% of it is casting, and the cast is just incredible. Like, they understood what was necessary for that kind of performance in season 1, and they figured out how to make that shift into season 2. And that was not an easy thing to ask of them. So hats off to them.
And as someone who talks to a lot of folks like you, I loved the explanation and how you guys handled it. You just straight out said it. It was great. Like, we're changing the show, and it was you didn't break the fourth wall, but you broke the fourth wall for those of us that are paying attention. So that was great. Yeah. Since you talked about the cast, let's bring the cast member in. Here comes Ryan. Hey, Ryan. Same question for you. Is this a new kind of acting?
So I don't know if this is a new kind of acting, but I will say that the acting styles from season 1 and season 2, like Dan had mentioned, absolutely, had to change a little bit. And the biggest challenge, especially season 1, was, like you said, having that naturalism, because these characters are going through some extreme events, and super heightened circumstances. And being able to deliver that as natural as possible without, like Dan said, kind of going over the top. I know that was, my biggest acting challenge for the YouTube kind of sections or season 1 of it. And you're right about, like, the, this is how people act on YouTube. There was times where I was playing the host, of the YouTube show within the show. And there was a couple times where I remember I was supposed to be forgetting my lines for the host part, right? So I just didn't memorize that scene at all, and just tried to actually act through memorizing those lines.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Lines every once in a while, and then the other characters kind of getting involved. Like, they thought I was legitimately, because I was forgetting him in different places every take or whatever. So they thought, oh, he really doesn't know these lines, and they were playing along with it. So that was fun. But yeah, the transition into season 2, it's got to be subtle, because it's, again, still very naturalistic, but when you watch it, I mean, the filming of it is more epic. The locations are more epic. The style of it changes. So we do, as performers, also have to subtly change that performance. And I think, a lot of it came a little bit naturally because we were on a set that warranted that bigger kind of performance, that television, single camera narrative drama performance. We're doing different action sequences that we weren't doing in season 1. So it just kind of elevates that kind of performance automatically.
The only thing I would
give me a second, Dan.
Yeah.
You're trying to do this YouTube style acting, right? I don't know that this has been done very much. You're trying to act like someone who's, first time on camera, in front of a camera, these kind of things. How do you get a sense for that? How do you prep for that? So that, because, I mean, it's the screen might be this big, it might be on, you're acting for like you said, completely different space. How did you prep for that?
Well, with a lot of prior YouTube acting, I guess. But also, I mean, everybody can kind of, to some degree, for everybody who's even not an actor, you can kind of slip into the announcer voice tonight at 6 p.m. We have, you can slip right into what does a sportscaster sound like versus what a newscaster sounds like versus what a Valley Girl sounds like. We have those kind of different voices, kind of, we can mimic those inherently. Same thing with kind of an acting style. It's like, I know if I'm on a YouTube and I'm like, all right, in this site, so the Black Dahlia was right here amidst this, a lot like this, like that lends itself to a YouTube style acting. And then you can transition right into, there's a great scene where it's like, I have to give a speech for the YouTube show. And immediately afterwards, I transition into having a very serious conversation with my sister in real Ryan. And that was probably the biggest, immediate transition from this YouTube style to the more naturalist style. And the training of it, like I said, just a lot of YouTube acting and a lot of just knowing how to mimic those different styles.
I got an airplane going overhead. Dan, I cut you off earlier. What were you going to say?
Oh, just that to the extent that we try to support those shifts in performances in season 2, one of the ways that I know Austin and I discussed, Austin Lee Smoke is our cinematographer. She and I tried to develop a lot of oneers, particularly earlier in the season, in season 2, because it would still lend itself to the style of season one, where characters could interrupt each other and talk over each other, and you don't have to edit around them. And it was very similar to the acting and the shooting style of season one, and that there were these longer takes without editing that kind of put the performances, the onus entirely on the performances, and then tried to gradually transition to something more traditional throughout season two. So early on in season one, there's still hopefully a lot of that, or we would try and shoot with two cameras and roll them at the same time, so that again the actors could interrupt each other and step on each other's lines, and we could just roll right with that in the editing, and not kind of develop these very natural pauses that a lot of I mean, it's a very talented thing to be able to pull off naturally, but a lot of actors have to build pauses into their delivery and conversation so that they don't step on the other actor's line. And we had to, the cast, we had to ask them to do this difficult thing throughout season two, where sometimes it was okay and sometimes it wasn't okay, you know, and they had to walk that line too. So that was another thing that they did incredibly well. It was a difficult thing to ask, but we did try to make it easier with two cameras or single takes and so forth.
Can you give us an example of that?
Early on in season two, we do a lot of like traditional, like the first scene is a found footage style shot of Jamie getting picked up from foster care, and then it goes to a screen capture of Detective Epps and Ryan and Colin, you know, watching the footage back. And then the first time we come out of that found footage captured style, we go to a single handheld take in the desert of Epps and Ryan and Colin asking about what happened. And that is a single handheld take that allows them to kind of interrupt each other and talk over each other. It's no longer found footage, but they're able to give the same kinds of performances because they're not being edited.
That's awesome. There are all these complexities. We had Tony Toast on the show. He's sort of become a little bit of a friend, if I'm going to be presumptuous. And I love to ask him some of these, like, these are the hard things about being a producer kind of questions, because you're out there, you're trying to create this thing, and ultimately you've got this knob: production perfection, right? And you know, the budget limits how far you can turn it towards perfection. So you get a little more budget, you're able to do more things, you're able to evolve the show, but you don't have enough money. So what are the sacrifices you have to make now in the current version of it?
You know, I got to say, I don't know how we did a lot of this, but we added a car chase with a train. So we just kept, that wasn't in the script. We kept adding bigger and bigger stuff because I think as the longer it went on, we just kind of got more confident with how we could find a lot of production value with very little money. And I'm just a huge proponent of the notion of something being good enough, you know, not letting perfect be the enemy of good or the enemy of great. And I get bored really easily. I'm sure Ryan can tell you, like, you know, he'll be like, can I have one more take? I think, you know, I can nail it this time. And, you know, and I'll be like, I think you nailed it on take two, and I kind of want to move on. But, you know, I'm a big proponent of something being good enough. And I think it's kind of insane that because we had a very scrappy indie background long before we got to LA Macabre, we were already pretty well suited to figure out cheap ways to accomplish things that looked bigger or more expensive than they were. And I'm still kind of floored by the idea that we achieved our ambitions in a script that ridiculous. And not only that we added these insane elements to it as we went. So yeah, I don't know. I think it just has to do with a kind of a background in figuring out how to do big things with nothing. And so having a little bit more money allows you to do even bigger things with pretty much nothing, you know?
What are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I remember reading the script and not giving anything away, but something happens, you know, towards the end, and I just was like floored. I'm like, how the heck are we gonna pull that off? Like, you know, and you know, we did get money for season two, and from our amazing Kickstarter backers, and I always want to thank them for making it happen. And we also had you know, investors after that as well, and they're amazing to help us support it. But again, I don't think people really understand what what it takes to put something on screen these days with the types of action that we're doing, with the type of sequences that we're doing, the locations that we're doing. I mean, we were able to expand the world and make it happen, but we still were, you know, just kind of squeezing every ounce of production out of the dollars that we had. So,
and another part of this new form of acting that I'm proposing is that, Ryan, you are also now a marketing and PR person. Like, you have to, so you have to build this audience, right? And they're going to go to YouTube, and you're still saying, please ring the bell. Please do comment. Oh, you did a comment. I'm desperate to comment back to you because this is the formula that YouTube and Google demand, right? And so you have to really advocate for your project. I mean, because if you can't build an audience, there's no project.
Right. You know, and a lot of that came from our family and friends through the Kickstarter campaign, and we developed a great relationship with the people who were wanting to support us, and then they became invested in not only the show, but the production of the show, which made them more invested in the story overall. So luckily we have a good base there. And then also season 1 did really well with festivals, and you know, we got some great awards during that time. And there was a lot of relationships developed through those festivals. And Dan was great at building relationships through all the festivals that he went through with season 1. And a lot of those people are our champions through season 2 and helping us support. So it's a lot of, you know, genuine connective relationships with the business and with family and friends who really want to see us do well, you know?
Dan, when you look at this new market form, I mean, obviously the old ways work too, but your show, in part because it's on Amazon, is now discoverable. And so something that may never have had legs in the old way because the ratings just didn't get there, this thing can continue to spin for people. They can go back through, they can go, let me get caught up. I mean, my buddy Jeff, who's a screenwriter, he is watching The Crown right now, the entire thing, you know, because we're going to do a show on it and we're going to talk about it. And so here's someone who probably never would have watched it. He's watching it all the way through, and it's highly likely that he will watch it more than once because it's just available. This is a crazy, totally new thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, you know, kind of back to the democratization of production. You've also got the democratization of, you know, distribution in a way. You have a way of getting it out there to people. And it's a wonderful thing to know that if you get it done, it doesn't have to die. You know, like there will be a way to make sure that audiences can find it. What gets really difficult in that, same as our discussion before about there being so much content, is, you know, you want the quality to rise to the top, but there's a lot of noise to cut through, and there's a lot of content out there. And so the onus really does fall on the filmmakers to find a way to get it in front of audiences. And it is nice that it's easy for them. The nice thing about it being on Amazon Prime or Tubi is that if you tell somebody in conversation where to find it, you know, that's much easier for them, you know, than if you're like, well, I have this thing, you know, I'll send you some links, you can take a look at it anytime. For some reason, it's just easier for them to know that they can access it at Amazon anytime that they want. But it does get a lot harder to make sure that people, you know, actually want to go and find it. And I think that given the amount of content there is out there, and how even Amazon is going to try and prioritize its own originals and things that it's licensed and spent money on, you know, you have to really drum up support at a grassroots level in order to get the algorithm to put the show in front of new people, people that might have loved your show but would have never found it. It's a lot of responsibility to try to market your show, and it is kind of the curse of indie filmmakers that they have to go and be their own marketing team a lot of the time, you know, or they have to develop their own marketing strategy, even if they're bringing on a marketing team outside of them, you know, like it's up to them. They don't have a studio or a production company who does that for them. So that is the trick. And that is the thing that I think a lot of indie filmmakers never really budget for, never really think about doing. And I've certainly been guilty of in the past, is they don't think beyond just getting the project done. It's such a harrowing experience just to get it done that they don't think about how you get it out there once it's done. And that's its whole other stressful thing.
How do you guys both, and I'm just go first, Dan, but how do you guys decide on when a project like this, and I don't mean this one specifically, but in general, how does a project like this let you know when it's time to move on? You know, I mean, you've got these 100,000 people, 200,000 people, you know, a million people, and they're all desperate for it. I mean, there's a reason why shows go on for 11, 12, 20 years. You know, I mean, there's still The Simpsons. They've been canceled 4 or 5 times along the way, and the audience says, keep making it, please. So how do you like go, okay, this is enough, and really kill it off when it's in demand?
Oh man, I don't know. I can't wait to have that problem. I will say that, you know, I can only speak to this show, and I can say that we designed it as a 3-season arc, and we would like there to be a 3rd season. But occasionally you get someone who, you know, if you're talking business, they're like, you know, yeah, but like if we found the money, like you could do a season 4 or 5, right? And it's like, I mean, we could, but the story wouldn't be as good because it was only meant to go on for so long. It wasn't meant to kind of, I think this is what happened with Lost, was they were never told when they were allowed to end it. So there's a lot of like dragging it out in the middle, you know, if you hear the show creators talk about it. And I don't really want to end up in that. I'd rather kind of have the leave them wanting more problem, you know, have the ending that we always planned, tell the full story, and not leave everything on the field and not drag it out longer than we need to. I feel like this universe it's ripe for a lot of expanding on the outsides of it, but you know, with spin-off movies or a prequel season or something. But the main thrust of like Ryan, Jamie, Colin, Callie's story was always meant to be 3 seasons and just kind of leave it there.
I'm a fan of the in-betweenquel, by the way. The in-betweenquel is, you know, hey, this happened also during this time, you know. I want to get your thoughts on this, Ryan.
I love the in-betweenquels where it's like side characters, you know, or like the end of Wall-E or something like that when you see the robot, you know. I think it breaks down to what kind of narrative is your story. You know, is your story a vessel or a conduit for something like pop culture, you know, something in the case of like South Park. South Park can go on forever because it's commenting on current events. The characters in South Park are just, you know, these stereotypical characters that are a vessel for the comedy and a vessel for kind of working through and digesting what's currently going on in current events. Whereas if you have a narrative like Breaking Bad, where it's like, okay, we can't put the show on forever. It's got to have a conclusion because it is a story that has an arc that we've seen the arc and we see where it's going in the end, and we want it to end. We want to have that satisfying finish. So I think it breaks down to like, how do you know when it's over? It's like, if your narrative is supposed to have an arc and a complete finish, then finish it when it's time. And if you're told to stretch it out, you know, you can only stretch it out so much, or you can only reinvent or have a different interpretation of that story that keeps it expanded before you're on diminishing returns, I think. So, yeah.
No, that's a great answer. You're 100% right on the South Park thing. They all play these unique roles, and when they need a different role, they bring it in, and you know the character can disappear. Yeah, you're right. That's good. So let's talk a little bit about season 2. Things kind of change, like you said. The production quality is different. Everything evolves. What stands out for you in terms of like what are the interesting things that happen when you have this newer level of show making? Mm-hmm. What stood out for you as you went through this season?
I think the biggest thing that stood out for me was the amount of other characters that are introduced in the show. We have amazing actors who have come in for maybe just one day, you know, on set or one scene, but they add so much richness to the overall story, and it sends, you know, my character on a whole different path once meeting them. And unfortunately, I'm so grateful I got to work with a majority of these actors and new characters in the season. And then also the locations for me. I love traveling, and I love taking landscape photography and just being immersed in a new place. And with season 2, there were so many amazing, rich locations that you know, really added to the tapestry of the show, but also gave me a sense like, oh yeah, we're expanding the world here. This is getting bigger. So I think for visually and just experientially, those two things really stood out for me for season 2.
Dan, and I'm glad that Ryan brought this in, because this is really what I wanted to get to with you is, as a writer, as a creator, you now have a new problem. You've got this bigger show to create. You've got these other characters to bring in. You had it written, because you always have it written, and you love writing. So I'm sure you went back in, but it creates a new set of problems. Talk a little bit about that. And by the way, good job with all those SAG AFRA, stamps at the end of this thing. You also made this thing, by working through, the guild. And I think that's a laudable thing, because it's easy to not do that, to be guerrilla and never move up to that level. And so good on you for doing that. But I'll shut up and let you talk.
Well, I mean, first of all, I would have to say that our producer David really navigated, the best way to make sure that we could work with SAG and work with, SAG actors, and we're very thankful to be able to do that. And I can't speak to what the contracts look like now, but at the time that we were making the show, they were very equitable and very open when it came to being able to work with people on a web series or a digital series. So them making it that open and easy for us really, really helped a lot. And we're very thankful for that. Season one was about 100 pages. Season 2 was supposed to be about 100 pages. Season 2 ended up being 300 pages. And yeah, and it just kind of kept expanding. But I guess this, going back to a lot of the indie discussions we were having, it really, when you're your own boss, you have the room to do that. You have the room to kind of decide organically, this is what the world needs. This is the character that makes sense right now. And you're only really restricted by your ability to pull that off in production. So nothing about how it ended up in 300 pages felt wrong. It all felt like a natural extension of where the characters need to go and the stories needed to go. And I just followed that. And I'm grateful that I was allowed to follow that to its conclusion. But it is tricky. It was not, you weren't supposed to have this many new characters with this many new side stories, but they all just lent themselves to the story in a really organic way. And they have mostly presented me with how those stories would play out in a third season, which is nice. It was nice to not feel completely like I'd opened Pandora's box and I didn't know how to shut it. They organically lend themselves to an ending. But yeah, it wasn't meant to do that. We just got lucky or unlucky, depending on how you want to look at that. Yeah.
As someone who's trying to do some of this in audio drama form, I definitely don't want too many characters, because it's hard in audio format to keep track of everybody. And always you have at least, if you have a narrator, you always have a second narrator. That's because sound plays a character in these things, because the sound has to inform you, like, hey, they're on the train. Hey, they're inside the tank, or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. So as you think about this as a creator, I mean, obviously season 2, you opened it up, but you didn't go crazy and make like a cast of 1,000s. Like, you're still limiting yourself. Do you have a sense for what would work? Or are you like, what we can make? I mean, are you like we'll figure it out kind of guy?
I'm a we'll figure it out kind of guy. If it makes sense to the story and it makes sense to the characters, then I would rather figure it out. I'm not somebody that likes to go in and cut something for budget or cut something for time. I'm very much interested in, well, this is what's going to be best for the story, best for the characters. So we need to find a way to make sure that it works.
I've got a lawnmower right behind my yard because there's landscaping going on. So Ryan, fill some time for us.
Yeah, sure. Fill some time. Oh man, like, what was the question? Well, let me say that it has been a blast working on the show. All right, good night, bye guys.
So Ryan, what are you working on? What are you working on creatively?
Okay. Yeah, so right now I am developing a podcast as well. So I'm gonna have to talk to you about some podcast tips here, but podcast is called Seeds of Our Future, and I want to talk to people who are working in organizations that are they have their mission to work towards a sustainable, compassionate, and equitable future, and see what they're doing, what steps they're taking to make that happen, and then how an average person can make steps in their life to further that mission. So that's kind of the scope of the show, and I'm going to try to get that off the ground this year. So I'm working on that.
I love it. Are you writing anything in terms of like screenplays, that kind of stuff at all?
You know, I've done a lot of ideas, and I like development of story, but I found that there are far more talented people around me who are much better writers, and so I'd rather focus on the acting and maybe some story development here and there. But writing, I think I'd have to dedicate some time to getting better at that craft before I dove in that way.
But this is LA. You're supposed to be multi-slashed. So you're Ryan Hellquist, singer, songwriter, actor, whatever,
Sure.
right? So do you have any other interests that kind of take up your time, or is acting your main focus? And it's okay if it is, because there's plenty of people that do that.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of things that take up my time that are not involved in acting, but right now it's obviously a very unique time. So it's kind of like, what can I do inside? What can I safely do outside? So, like I said, I mentioned I love traveling. So I've gone to a lot of national parks this past year, and that's been great. It's trying to getting into more photography. So I love landscape photography. That's my favorite. But then also getting in more into portrait photography. I took some photos of my best friend's band in the stars, did some promo images for them, and they've now put that out on their social media. So I love photography as a hobby. I don't know if that'll be a money-making endeavor, but it's definitely something that I'm really interested in. Love traveling, being outdoors in nature, anything I can do to try to be a better steward of the environment. So looking into those kind of ways, very passionate about that. Yeah. Still got the hype. Podcaster, host, actor, producer.
Hey, though, you got plenty
director.
of things.
Sure.
We had DeLon J on yesterday, and he's written over 1,000 songs. He's charted. He's an entrepreneur. He buys property. I'm like, my God, man.
Yeah.
And he's got an energy drink. And he does all these incredible things. So there's a lot of folks that are like, I'm doing this. So he's moved on. You said something interesting I wanted to get back to. You mentioned Valley Girls. Now, I'm a guy from the 80s. And so when that song came out and that movie came out and everything, Valley Girls, in my mind, they're all 50-something-year-old ladies now. They're moms. And they probably don't say, okay, for sure. What's a Valley Girl today? How would you describe a Valley Girl?
Oh, man. A Valley Girl today would probably be something akin to like a TikTok or Instagram influencer with a very some sort of false voice. I can't even think about okay, so I just wanted to share with you this new Booty Pop exercise product. And if you use my link in the code, you can get 10% off. Something like that, probably.
I love it.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.
Dan, so what are you working on? I mean, obviously you've got this project. Do you have space and time for something else, or where are you at creatively?
I've been focusing a lot on transitioning towards screenwriting. I have every intention of writing and directing as many projects as I can, but put a lot of feature screenplays out there in the last year or so, trying to find homes for them. Some of them I'd like to produce myself. Some of them I'd like to sell. Some of them I'd like somebody else to give us money for so I can direct. So kind of all over the place. But funny enough, one of those is an in-betweenquel, I guess, for LA Macabre. It's a side story that takes place parallel to season one, with some overlapping characters and some new characters. And I would love to get that made as well and have that story kind of dovetail into a third season where the films kind of meet the show itself and finish both of those arcs. So fingers crossed that we're able to find support to do that and other things, including a third season.
As a guy that hires guild actors, you've got to work with the guild on keeping them safe in terms of, hey, it's just really hard to produce things reliably. Yes, you can go indie and super guerrilla and go do it, but you're trying to do something else. How do you know when it's time to push versus let's just be cautious? Because you know, it is a very delicate balance. We have Mark Pellington on the show, and he, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but his dad was an NFL player. He's a huge hulking man, right? And so if he says, I need you to go do this, it can be terrifying because he's just this huge, massive human. And
Mark
he's like, I've got
like Arlington Road and Mothman Prophecies. Like, I love those movies.
No, he's great, right? But he can be intimidating, and so he's like, you know, you have to be careful. You can't say get your butts into gear because it will cause a problem for your production. So as you look at trying to push the accelerator, get things done because you're a get done creative kind of guy, how do you also work within that paradigm of, you know, I want to travel too. I want to go out and I want to do things. I love having the show on the road, but I can't presume to put somebody else's COVID situation in jeopardy or give them any stress because I've showed up and, you know, I'm able to mitigate the risk. They're not willing to. How do we balance all this stuff?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I feel like, you know, there's almost two sides to it. One is how do you safely do this in COVID? And then the other one is how do you safely do that at an indie level when you're doing something with a lot of stunts and a lot of, like, you know, out there in the middle of nowhere locations and everybo's living in a cabin together and all that. And if
you don't do something Dan says, he just threatens to put us in a barrel. So that's how he usually makes us do things.
Yeah, you know, it's really nice to have a credible threat on hand at all times. But I would say Ryan probably has a really good sense of what the vibe is on set. But to answer the COVID question first, I don't feel like I would be comfortable trying to produce something with anybody right now. I don't like, especially at an indie level, I know that there are smaller crews and it's easier for people to kind of pod together and stuff. And if there were a dozen of us who really wanted to do that, I would be all for it, you know? But I certainly wouldn't say, well, get on the train or it's leaving without you. You know, it would have to be a situation where everybody really wanted to do that for a month or two and make something happen. Otherwise, I just don't think it's a responsible time to be making productions. I honestly don't think that the big productions should be going right now. I think it's kind of ridiculous that somehow they lobbied to call, you know, the industry in Los Angeles has somehow designated everyone essential workers within the entertainment industry. I think that's absurd. I think they're putting people in danger, and I don't think they should be doing it. But I would say that in terms of how you work on set as an indie production with the level of stunts and ambitions that we have, you know, obviously there are some, you know, there are some risks involved, but I have a friend of mine who was a stunt person, and she came in and was doing stunt coordination for us on the bigger, crazier days. And I think, quite honestly, you know, and I would like to hand this off to Ryan because I think that he can probably give you a clearer idea of how successful this is or is not. But if somebody said, I'm not comfortable with that, we really did try to find an alternative, you know, and we always tried to be ahead of them in terms of thinking about the safest way to do something, to make sure that the safest version was already where we started and what we presented them with. I'm also an editor, so I'm usually thinking in terms of how you can cut this to be effective instead of having to actually throw someone off a building or whatever, you know. So we usually try to be pretty far ahead of people in terms of safety and how we considered to filming something in a safe way. And I think it was all just a very big family with a lot of trust and a lot of people that really were looking out for each other. And I hope that we created an environment where people felt comfortable speaking up if they felt they had needs in that regard or other regards that weren't being met, so that we could meet that. I don't think we were ever a do it our way or the highway situation. Yeah, Ryan, I don't know. What do you? I hope that that's accurate.
It is absolutely. All joking aside, you were fantastic at keeping us safe, and yeah, it is a concern, Pete, though, because like I've definitely been on some other lower budget stuff where people got hurt, and you know, you try to push the envelope with making something that is extraordinary, and that includes, you know, stunts and some dangerous things that, you know, people want to see. It's exciting. Right. But at an indie level, you know, people do sacrifice safety for that production. With LA Macabre, I never felt that way. There was, you know, there's definitely fight sequences and gunplay, and there's, you know, things with cars, and all of it was prepped and talked about extensively before we went into it. We were always given the green light to call it if we felt unsafe, and everything was done really, really carefully. And to my knowledge, no major injuries, and definitely not from me. But you know, everything felt great, and we were still, I think, shocked people. I remember there were still things that we did, fight wise, gun wise, car wise, that just, when you're watching it in the theater or watching it at home on the screen, I mean, it jumps out at you. So I think we accomplished the goal of still bringing that excitement and doing it safely.
No, that's great. I mean, the safety thing is huge. And just with COVID, it adds that extra layer. And then the perception of the fear, you know, it makes these things complicated. I wanted to discuss a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a writing hole, but I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are. When JP is in the barrel, and this hopefully won't spoil this for anybody, but I need these guys to know what I'm talking about. The odds on anything negative happening are so astronomical because you're driving in LA, right? So how many times a year does a airplane land on the 405, you know, or a fire truck fall off the side of a cliff on a highway? You know, like there are so many. I once saw a ladder in the front end of a car going up the Grapevine. Like, you imagine you're going home for Thanksgiving and a ladder ends up going through your car, and you're just like, oh, you know. So there's all these things that could happen. And these guys are driving, and I'm like, where's the LA? Where's the LA? It's coming. It's coming. And I kept coming, waiting for some kind of ridiculously impossible thing to happen. But you know, so talk about the decisions on how much LA you put into your LA Macabre story. And I'll have you go first, Ryan, and then Dan follow up.
How much LA to put in the LA Macabre story? And I'm sorry, the type of LA you're talking about is
you, if you're driving anywhere, it can be 5 blocks. It can take 45 minutes. We all know this, right?
Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. In terms of like the realistic nature of LA.
Like if you go into a canyon to film something, there's going to be all kinds of people hiking, you know, like getting their workout in. It's just, there's LA things that are just part of LA, but they can't all make it into the show, you know?
I see what you're saying. Yes. Well, absolutely. I mean, the LA Macabre, first of all, the whole crux of the show, especially the show within the show, is to explore the dark history of LA. So that is included a lot, you know, especially in season 1, we're touching on a lot of these events. And then, you know, we're going to the actual Susanna State Park where the Manson family was. And then we're going to, you know, currently places where, you know, like Salton Sea or parts of Olancha where people don't want to be found. I'm not saying anything specific, you know, cult or related or drug related or crime related are going on, but that's some of the places we were filming are places that people don't want to be found. So there's that dark undertone there as well. In terms of like, you know, traffic and seeing the other kind of tropes of LA, I think when it fit the story, it was in there. Or when it's a joke, it's in there. When we, you know, like one thing that was an amazing story device that I'm trying to think. I don't think it'll give. There's fires that happen in the show, and it, you know, creates an added challenge, and that added challenge is perfect for the story, and it's 100% believable because fires happen, unfortunately, all the time in LA. So that was something that's like, oh, that's a very LA, very almost like California type thing that we recognized, but also helped the story.
I'm trying to get that. Dan, what are your thoughts on how much LA you put into your story?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because I did a lot of driving up around, you know, the 14 and Soledad Canyon Road and the Sierra Highway and all that. And I will say that at the times that I was there was not a lot of traffic. So, you know, Ryan and Colin kind of like careening along the 14 to get where they're going. They actually were on the 14 performing some of that. And so, you know, they really weren't running into a lot of stuff there, which I thought was kind of funny. But you know, there's definitely that sense of like, you don't want realism to be the enemy of entertainment, you know. And so they definitely get up to Canyon Country in like 10 minutes when it should have taken them 40 minutes, you know, or they get up there way faster than they should, just because, you know, you can't have a 45-minute episode of them driving, and JP would never survive. Yeah. So, like we kind of have to take that as it comes. I think somebody in the writers' room for Breaking Bad might have actually been Vince Gilligan or one of his team that made the observation that the audience will accept bad luck, or like they'll accept coincidence if it's inconvenient for the character. They won't accept it if it helps them out, because then it feels like a cheat. It feels too easy. But kind of like, the wildfires happening in season 2, that's a horrific coincidence with horrific consequences for some characters. But we accept it. And some of it is we accept it because it is an incredibly California and Southern California problem to have. And that is part of why I think it's fun to have in there. Is it really is a consideration, at least a couple times a year in California, but also because it's not a convenience. It is a convenience for the drama of the story, but it's not a convenience for any of the characters. It makes life harder for the characters. So I think you accept it there.
You really could make California a character in this thing. Like, for example, if there is an active police investigation to a murder that happens in, one of these canyon type places. And then, they're like, yes, everything's roped off. We're doing our investigation. And then a wildfire comes and just burns the damn thing down.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And to an extent, I hope we've kind of started to do that, because we do want the show to keep expanding at the scale that season 2 expands. Mm-hmm. And that means that more of it would take place further away from Los Angeles, and the title becomes a little bit more of a misnomer as the show goes on, because they keep getting further and further away from LA. One of my favorite, like, completely outside of the show tidbits, like, there's no way to really know this if you're watching it, but there's a big sequence in the finale that takes place along Owens Lake. And Owens Lake is the salt flat up in Owens Valley that the first aqueduct to LA was built to, and it was drained in order to create LA. And it destroyed really fertile farm region in the area. It turned a farming community into a desert community. It was, for the longest time, the second largest natural source of air pollution in the world, behind the Sahara Desert, because of the sand and the dust coming off of the bottom of that. And so, even though the finale of LA Macabre takes place out in the desert, it is still adjacent to a very dark chapter in LA's history, and it is fun trying to find little things like that. I have other things I'd like to do similarly for for this, like, between movie, this side movie, and for season 3, where, like, even when it's not in LA has tentacles, that kind of go into the rest of California, particularly Southern California, that, have devastated or darkened certain things. And like, making sure that even if they're not overt in the story, that they're kind of there is gratifying for me.
I would like to make a short. This is one of my ideas. I'll never do it, but I just think it's a funny idea, is images of people getting onto the 110 for the first time, especially in classic cars. Can you imagine, some middle-aged like, I've got a great job and I'm going to live here in my VW Bug from 1972 and get onto the 110.
I definitely almost died on the 110 when first time I drove it. So
yeah, for the audience, it's this freeway, literally a freeway, people going by at 80 miles an hour. And the way you get on is you make a right at a stop sign. There is no on-ramp. There is no merge lane. It's just go as fast as you can. If your car doesn't go, oh my God, it's terrifying.
There's another spot too where the 101 and 110 merge, where I had a job that I had to get down to, and like every day I had to cross over 6 lanes to get to the side, because it's like you enter in on the far side, and then to get to the exit you got to go 6 lanes all the way across, from not only just 6 lanes on a normal freeway, 6 lanes of 2 converging freeways. So it's just a mess.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't want to take any more of you guys' time. This was awesome. Everybody should definitely watch LA Macabre. It's on Amazon. It's on Tubi. It's in a lot of spots, but just watch it. It's fun. And here's the thing. This is why we support indie movies. You can always go watch a superhero movie. It's always going to be available. But these guys, this is what they're doing. You're watching their dream live on TV. Like, they've are dying to create this thing, and I just can't do enough to support folks like you guys, because I love what you're doing. I love the hustle. I love that you're giving us something besides a sequel. I cannot stand comic book movies, and if someone says J.J. Abrams directed it, I just can't stand that guy. And I'll tell you, going back to what you said earlier, Dan, he kept Alias going too long, and then he parked the USS Enterprise under the water for like first time ever. Like, that thing doesn't have to do that. And I was like, I'm never watching. I'll watch his movies, but I'm just not drawn to it anymore because I can't make the jumps that he makes. So I appreciate you guys making something that I can enjoy, and I'm not mad at J.J. Abrams, just for everybody. But anything in closing?
Oh man, well, thank you so much for your support, and yeah, definitely check out the show. And I just had such a blast. We all had such a blast making it. So it really is a labor of love, and the quality and the story, it really shines. And so everybody that has seen it, family and friends, people who would be highly critical, have still said, I love it. It's amazing. It kept me on my feet. It kept me watching more. So it's a good one. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I'm literally going to go back inside and finish up the rest of season 2. Like, I didn't get all the way through it, but I can't wait. And then, Dan, this is your baby. Tell us the last thing you want to tell us about it.
I mean, just echoing Ryan, thanks to everyone for the support. Thank you for the support and the platform to be able to talk to you and others about it. We hope that people enjoy it. I hope that they go and check it out. And honestly, if they want to support the show, and they're not somebody that has a giant checkbook to like make season 3 for us, little things that they can do, or just to like, tweet about it, post about it, tell friends and family, and go on to Amazon, write us a little review, give us, your appropriate star rating. Hopefully we earned a 5, but be honest. And things like that help with the algorithm. They get it out there. The higher its rating on Amazon, the more reviews that it has, the better chance it just pops up in somebody else's feed someday and they discover it on their own. So all of that would be helpful, and we really hope that we'll find a way to make season 3.
He's not joking about this algorithm. I'm supposed to, on YouTube, make faces like this and then put words next to my face, like LA Macabre on YouTube now. And then that's what you're supposed to do, literally, to beat the algorithm. So help these guys out. Rate, review, support, tweet, all these things. It may seem small to you, but it's big for all of us. All right, you guys, I'm going to sign off. Stand by one moment while I run my little reel. This is my new thing I'm doing here.
Right on.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down Show.